All right, Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra 5G. Samsung definitely hasn't stopped with the ridiculous naming conventions that they started after like the Galaxy S7. But anyway, this is going to be an honest review of my use of this device over the past few days, my likes, my dislikes, everything in between. This is a beast of a phone, so stay tuned for an honest look at the S21 Ultra 5G. All right, so let's jump right in with the specs. Even though I don't like to talk about specs in my videos, I'm gonna talk about them here just because a lot of specs go into this phone. We'll talk about the usability of it here in a second. But right off the bat, it's a 6.8 inch quad HD dynamic AMOLED screen, which is by far the best part of the phone, and we'll talk about that more later. It also has a whopping 5,000 milliamp hour battery under the hood, which is crazy powerful. So that's going to last you all day, which is fantastic. Samsung has, I would say, reduced the design by incorporating a plastic back on this phone. No longer, gone are the days of glass that can break. I'm not going to say this feels cheap because it doesn't feel cheap. It actually feels really good. But it does feel different than some of the glass-backed phones like from Apple or like the previous Pixel from Google. Google has now gone to a plastic back on their Pixel 5 as well. It does come with 128, 256, or 512 gigs of storage. It has an octa-core chip, a 2.8 gigahertz processor in there, a 12 or 16 gigs of RAM in this bad boy. And it does have the latest 5G technology built in, which you can't really use right now on most carriers, but it is getting more widespread and it is becoming more available. It does have 3 different lenses in the back. It's got an ultra wide, a wide angle, and a telephoto. This model does have the ability to capture up to 108 megapixels on the wide angle lens, and it will get condensed down into a 12 megapixel version for the actual image. It does also incorporate an f1.8 aperture lens with what they call a pro grade camera. The 1.8 aperture lens is great for shooting in low light situations. If you're into photography, you understand that an f1.8 is actually a very fast lens. And the other thing that you'll notice too on this device is it does incorporate a fingerprint sensor under the glass, and they use that in addition to facial unlock technology up front, so you get the combination, kind of the best of both worlds, with biometrics, either face unlock or fingerprint or both, or PIN, just like you'd use on the older Android phones. Right, so what has Samsung done with this phone? What is it? Is it a phone? Is it a tablet? Is it a phablet? Do you remember those days back in like 2010, 2011 where we started calling stuff phablets? Well, this ridiculous 6.8 inch screen right off the bat is incredibly hard to hold one-handed. I mean, I can't use this phone. As much as I like it, as much as I like the display, I can't use this phone one-handed. It's too big for my hands. It's a two-handed phone. So right off the bat, for people like me, it's going to exclude them because they're not going to be able to be comfortable using it. Sure, I can get one of those like sticky-on things that you can smush your fingers underneath and use it that way, but I don't like doing that. I like having a simple phone, no case, no buttons and bells and whistles on it. I just want to be able to hold it with one hand and use it with one hand so I can multitask throughout the day. So big phone. The weight and balance is actually really nice, even though you've got this raised sort of lip edge thing going on here. It doesn't feel funky in your hand. The overall style of the phone, to me, is rather good. You can see that Samsung has kind of shaded the logo into the back here, and there's actually no Samsung badges around the phone anywhere else, which is impressive considering back in the day it used to be Samsung everywhere, plasticky, cheap-looking Samsung. They've very much refined the build of this phone and made it much more competitive with things like Apple and Google. They've made it very clean, very striking. Every time I pick this phone up, I like it. That immediate reaction happens where I'm like, ooh, this is nice to hold on to. This feels really good in my hand. I like the fit and finish of this device. I like how it feels and how it looks. And I like the way the screen wraps around the edge and sort of the build quality of the device. The other device I get that with is the iPhone 12. I don't get that feeling with the Pixel 5 this year. It's just a bad design. I do get it with the S21 Ultra and the S21 in general. So for me, the fit and finish and build quality of this phone is really fantastic. So as we look around the phone, the other things to talk about are not very much. It's missing a lot of stuff from back in the day. We've got a couple microphone ports up here. We have nothing on this side of the phone. We have a volume rocker and power button on this side, which to me are too close together. I oftentimes will hit the power button when I'm searching for the volume rocker, which is annoying. They've got a whole other side of the phone here they could have used, or the top of the phone or whatever, but they put these two right next to each other, which is ridiculous. On the bottom, they've got a USB-C port. They have a speaker grill, microphone port, and your SIM tray down here. So all in all, very cleanly designed, very, very minimal in a way, and very sort of simplistic in the build quality of the phone. I think that you will genuinely find it attractive and enjoyable and usable, and you'll really like the build quality. So if you're a fan of my reviews, you know that I like to call them honest reviews, and I do that for a reason. I do that because I don't like to fill my reviews with a bunch of nonsense specs and things that people don't really care about. What I like to get to the heart of is the usability of the phone and what it all boils down to, which is the user experience. It doesn't matter if your phone has a 120 megapixel camera or an 8 megapixel camera. It matters if the phone's easy to use and takes good pictures, right? So while I'm on that subject, I want to talk about the way I'm going to structure this review. I'm going to talk about things that work on this phone, things that I like on this phone, and the things that I don't like about this phone, and then ultimately what it comes down to for me as a reviewer and a user, and whether or not I decide to use the phone. So jumping into the stuff that I do like the fact that it has built-in biometrics for fingerprints and facial unlock. I think that that's cool. I will say that the fingerprint oftentimes gets confused and doesn't work, and that it takes longer to unlock than like my Pixel. My Pixel is like instantaneous. Like I have it in like my finger on the sensor in my pocket. By the time it gets up to my sort of hand in my, in the viewing area, it's already unlocked and done. This takes a little bit longer and it gets confused, especially if your hands are kind of damp, if you've washed your hands or something like that. It oftentimes will not work. The other weird thing I've noticed about the fingerprint unlock is that sometimes if I use a different fingerprint, it will unlock an app and it will automatically open an app, and it's typically the same app. It's this weird bike app thing I have, this Kobe.bike, and so I don't understand what's going on with that. I'm not sure if it's a software glitch. It's odd, and it only does it occasionally, but it's weird when it happens. The other stuff that I do like about the phone, the screen, obviously we mentioned that earlier in the review, it's fantastic. You're not going to find a nicer screen out there. I mean, it's the saturation is perfect. The color accuracy is perfect. It doesn't have that huge, ridiculous color poppy, disgusting, the stuff that Samsung had back in the day. This just looks natural and it looks fantastic. You will love the screen on this phone, period. Cutout for the camera here is a little weird in the center. I mean, it's okay. They've done a nice job kind of outlining the screen around it. Looks good. Isn't a big deal. I do like it. The phone feels fast, it feels fluid, it feels easy to use, it feels like a modern smartphone. It doesn't have any lag that Samsung was plagued with back in the day. I've got a bunch of apps loaded on here that I use all the time. I don't necessarily like the sideways display of grid icons. I'd prefer a scrollable window. Whatever, it's okay. Another thing that's built into the software that you can't see on this phone, but it's active on my S21 non-Ultra, is if you turn on Samsung Pay, the way you get to it is you swipe up. And so I end up confusing the app drawer with Samsung Pay, and it ends up launching Samsung Pay more than it launches my apps. And so that can be a little bit frustrating from a usability standpoint. The other thing that's terrible on this phone, and let me say terrible with a T, a capital T, is the amount of bloat. Samsung has always had a bloat problem, and the S21 Ultra and the S21 series is not immune to the bloat problem either. If you like non-bloated phones, this is not the phone for you. Want an example of bloat? I imported all my settings and stuff from my Google Pixel, so it's a standard stock Android phone. This is not an unusual phone to import from. It's a baseline Google phone. Samsung has so many duplicate apps, and I can't remove them. I don't need 2 clocks, for example. I don't need 2 calendars, for example, right? I don't need Samsung Galaxy Shop. I don't need, let's look on this screen. We'll find more bloat. I don't need any of the Microsoft Office crap. I don't need LinkedIn. I don't need Samsung's internet app. I would use Chrome or something else, right? I don't need Samsung Notes. I have Google Keep. I don't need Samsung TV Plus. I don't need two phone dialers, right? I've got this phone and that phone. Like, it's just dumb and annoying and frustrating. I gotta go in here and turn off all these apps or uninstall them or hide them or whatever. It's ridiculous. I don't need two of these things, and it's annoying, and I hate dealing with it. But away from the duplicate app situation, we talk about, just the usability of the apps and how fast they are and how quick things load. I mean, everything about this phone is snappy. Like, if I want to go in and I want to multitask, I want to open another app and swipe through, easy peasy, nice and smooth, really quick. I can, quick close stuff to free up some RAM, jump in here and go and open up an app, and you can see how fast it is. I mean, the phone is quick, and I think that having that support with the high amount of RAM and the high storage and the octa-core processor, like, this phone will last a long time. And as long as Samsung and Google continue to update it, it will most likely remain smooth, and it will most likely provide you with a fast, fluid experience. Another cool thing that I didn't mention earlier about hardware is that this device will actually work with an S Pen. And so it's one of the only phones in the Note tablet ecosystem that will support the S Pen. That's pretty cool. It does not come with an S Pen, but it will support the S Pen, which is pretty darn awesome. It's big enough that you could easily take notes on here and draw and do some artwork on there, which is pretty cool. But it does have support for Samsung S Pen. So let's talk about the camera. It's probably one of the biggest things that Samsung has touted on this phone, and it is definitely an interesting setup they have here. So if I click on the camera icon, and I go to more, you can see just how many ridiculous things there are on here. Bixby Vision, AR Zone, AR Doodle, Pro, Panorama. I'm not going to read all these. You guys can see them. This is a lot to shove in here. And in my opinion, and again, this is only my opinion, it's a little over the top. And in classic Samsung style, they've just added way too much crap. I do like the zoom options they give you in the photo app. And what I mean by that is you can kind of choose between different lenses. You've got a 0.6 zoom, you've got a one-time zoom, you've got a 3.0 zoom, and then you have this adjustable zoom. And it can go all the way up to 100x, which is a little ridiculous. And most of that you can do digitally, in the post-processing. But to give you an idea of what these look like, I actually took some shots of my son here on all these different lenses. And so we'll go back starting here. So this is the 0.6x zoom. And I did it in kind of an interesting lighting situation here to give you an idea of what the HDR modes and kind of the quality of the images look like too. So this is the 0.6 zoom. You can see it's well exposed, given that it's a completely backlit subject, and his color on his head there is really good, and the hot water bottle and stuff, it's exposed really well considering difficult lighting. This is the 1x next to it. Again, difficult lighting, but still a very good quality shot. You can see some of the artifacts in here just in terms of the quality. Like, it's good. I wouldn't call it great. It's definitely not DSLR quality by any means, but from a camera phone, to be able to expose this scene in the way it did, I'm super impressed with the quality. Here's the 3x. Again, you see some artifacts here just in terms of the image quality. But again, you've got a moving baby with low light that's backlit, and it's still exposed incredibly well. It's sharp, it's usable, it's a good quality image. This is the 10x lens on here, and you can see that we're starting to lose some image quality here just with that level of zoom. When we zoom all the way in, it's getting a little muddy, but again, it's still probably a usable photo if you kind of sharpen it up and maybe tweak the color just a little bit. And finally, the 100 times zoom on his eyeball. With a moving subject, this was almost impossible to be able to fill in any detail here and actually see anything. Maybe if he was further away, you'd be able to get a little bit better quality, but you can kind of see the outline of his eye there. But again, he was moving and he was backlit, so it was a hard subject to tackle. But when you think about the flexibility that this camera system gives you with all these different zoom lenses and the ability to capture quality in this sort of lighting, it's impressive, and it's great that a phone can do this. I mean, you can basically not carry a camera around and still get really good quality images. And that's the other thing that the Pro mode offers, is it actually allows you the ability to store raw photos on here too. And so when you jump into the Pro mode, you can set the settings so that you can store the raw photo in addition to the JPEG, which is cool. If you're a photographer, you can edit those raw images a lot easier than you can edit JPEGs. It does give you complete control over the camera system. So you see you have the ability to change your ISO, change your shutter speed, or your aperture, change your shutter speed. Well, that's weird. This is an aperture and shutter speed combo. exposure levels, autofocus settings, white balance. It's the whole gamut of settings that you can run into from a photography standpoint, as well as zoom options built in. Video is another thing to talk about with this phone. It does have like a super stabilization mode, which is pretty cool. I haven't really used it a whole lot, but it will allow you to, not have so much camera shake when you're doing some video options, which is pretty neat. It does have the ability to take stills out of the 8K resolution camera on the back, which is neat. So you can film in 8K and then crop a still photo out of it and get a nice sharp image out of that thing. I did try and get just some everyday scene shots here around my house. I will say that, when I look at these photos compared to some of the stuff from my Pixel, the Pixel is a very good camera, and this probably goes, very close to the same quality as the Pixel. And I'm not 100% impressed with the portrait mode on this phone. It's good. It's just maybe not the best. I mean, a great example of how good it is compared to even the other S21 in the lineup. This photo is in portrait mode taken on the S21 Ultra. And what I like to look at is the resolution and the sharpness here, as well as how the image fades into the background on portrait mode. And you can see it's quite good. I mean, this is very well exposed. The color is great and the fade is great. And if I slide over to the portrait mode that was taken on the S21 non-Ultra, you can see it's a lower quality image. I mean, just look at kind of the details in his face and look at how the fading and lighting is done. And again, this is just an N of 1, a sample size of 1, but it's just not nearly as good an image as the one that was taken with the S21 Ultra. And so I found this pretty consistent across both devices, that the camera in general on the S21 Ultra is better. The S21, I would prefer the Pixel camera over that, whereas it's a little bit closer of a comparison between the two, Google Pixel 5 and the S21 Ultra. And so final thoughts on this phone. It is expensive. I think it's around $1,200 unlocked I bought mine from Samsung directly. Is it something that I would keep? No. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why. Number one, the cost. $1,200 is expensive. Does that mean it's not worth it? No, it just means it's expensive. And I think that for me personally, a Pixel 5 or even an iPhone 12 would suit the bill a little bit better, primarily the size of the device, as well as the things like bloat and the camera performance. So for me personally, I would not choose to own and keep the S21 Ultra. The biggest reason for me for that is the overall size. I mean, the annoyances of the software and camera and stuff I can kind of deal with, but I just can't use a phone that's this big. It's just not in my wheelhouse, and I'm not built to be able to use something like this. If you are a person with larger hands than me and you like a big phone and you've got $1,200 to drop, it's impressive. Is it on the same level as the iPhone 12 Pro? I haven't reviewed that, but my guess is yeah. I think that as time goes on, the differences between things like the iPhone Pros and the Samsung Galaxies are getting very, 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 very small. And each year they kind of go back and forth with which one makes a quote unquote better device. I like this device. I'm not going to knock it. I'm not going to say that it's not worth it. It's just not for me personally. But if you've got the cash to spend and you want something that's top of the line, that looks good, that feels awesome, check out the Galaxy S21 Ultra. You will be very, very impressed with the quality and the build and everything about the phone, albeit there may be a little annoyances here and there, but ultimately I think you'll like it. Check it out. Check out everything I have on YouTube, and don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, guys. Thanks.